Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show, Strange Reality with Dave Emmons. And for everybody on Facebook, I appreciate your support and what you're doing. I say this all the time because I get the support from you guys, and that's great. I will have a website up soon. I'm finishing off the little details right now myself, and I've got to finish that before I put it out. And I have my books on there and my uh, podcast. I also have some travel pictures that I put in there from traveling around. I guess I've been a traveler in the past, and I still like to travel. But uh, the world today with disclosure, and what we're going to talk about is what I got started getting into is sci-fi books, and my last book was sci-fi, and trying to sell that. And I got a lady on from Canada, Nancy Waddell. And no, we didn't. I don't want to get in deep in politics or what's going on between the U.S. and Canada and what's going, what's happening in politics. We'll stay away from that. But it goes deep. But we'll see how things work out. Uh, Nancy Waddell, the editor and publisher of the New Canadian Stories magazine, a literary magazine that features short stories and poetry from writers across Canada. Our latest issue featured a sci fi spotlight. I contributed a short story of my own about a 14-year-old boy who witnessed a UFO at a farm in Ontario, Canada in 1957. That's when a lot of stuff happened with flying saucers, and stay away from the flying saucers is what my mother told me when I was younger, back in the 50s and 60s. And lo and behold, she didn't know that I was face to face with them, and but she found out later, yeah, I was. The story was based on a true encounter. The boy and his friends even met with the men in black at the landing site. That's interesting, and the sighting was even featured in a newspaper at that time. The boys managed to create plaster cast of the footprints at the landing site and looked, uh, I guess they looked tridactyl in nature, means three toes or whatever, and possible
Yeah.
link to the Nazca mummies of Peru that are being studied today in South America. That's strange that you make something a parallel with that study. You're releasing your sci-fi short story anthology, An Orb Over the Strawberry Moon, and Amazon. It's going to be on Amazon this month, and she's included this story in the collection. There are 11 stories in total, and she's got a website, and I'll post that in the narrative. And we're just going to freelance it here. We're just going to talk about things. We're not going to have talking points. Matter of fact, Nancy, the last couple of interviews I had, it was kind of just a back and forth, and we didn't have talking points or questions. I don't take questions anyway. I usually take talking points, but you have enough here that we can talk about. And I'd like to start off, and Nancy Waddell, talking about how you got started in doing this stuff. And you said you had an encounter. Could you elaborate on that, Nancy?
Well, actually, how I got started, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I appreciate that. How I got started, actually, I graduated from journalism from Conestoga College, and that was a while ago now. And for one of my final projects, I was supposed to do a research article on UFO sightings and experiences in my part of Ontario here in Canada. So I had written actually a story for it was UFO Universe magazine. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's now
I've heard of it yet.
um, they've
I've never read
stopped
it.
publishing. They used to publish in the late 90s and early 2000s. And anyway, I wrote a story for that. And actually, that was one of the encounters that I wrote about was this, it's called the Nat Farm UFO encounter. And so um, jumping ahead, I've always remembered that story in my mind. I've always found it fascinating. So I thought I would loosely base one of my short stories from my upcoming anthology on the same UFO encounter. And what happened was apparently a boy who was about 14 years old named Jack Stevens, he witnessed a silver spaceship land at the Knapp Farm, which was in Galt, Ontario, in I believe July 30th, 1957, with his dog. And it was kind of like a Disney movie type of thing, really, because he sees this UFO and it buzzed the power lines, and then it landed, and it landed for about 45 minutes. It was on the ground. And, he was naturally terrified. He ran home and told his mom. And he decided to actually go back to the landing site. He wanted to go back and check it out because he had an inkling that maybe there was something that was left there that he could investigate. So he brought two of his friends, Danny and Jerry, and they were all about the same age, and went to the same school. So they biked over there with his dog, and they actually brought some plaster because they wanted to make plaster casts, because I believe they discovered that there were these tridactyl prints around the landing site, and there were actually big ones and little ones,
Hmm.
which was interesting. And actually, the tops of the trees were also burnt up, which is also an interesting physical piece of evidence that they were investigating.
Were
And
those prints, was those tridactyl prints, were they fresh, what they said? Uh, when
I
they just
think they were,
happened?
yeah, and they tried to fill it with plaster because they wanted to make plaster casts of these prints. And for whatever reason, it didn't really turn out for them. They had also brought a box camera with them, and it was a brand new camera, and they tried to take photos of the prints, and the photos didn't turn out, which seems to be kind of like um, a common theme with a lot of
Yes.
UFO encounters, where photos are people try to take photos of physical evidence or even of the UFO itself, and for whatever reason, it just does not show up on film. And some people have their own theories as to why that is. I don't know if you've heard of those theories, but some
Yeah.
people just
I've
think
actually
that,
I've actually experienced those theories with cameras.
yeah.
The magnetic energy that they elicit, they actually can run down your batteries, and they can do it, I guess, just by pointing a finger, and the energy of the camera just is gone. Uh, they have that much power to them, I guess. I've had a trail camera, like I've taken a lot of pictures inside my house, and the trail camera has actually been messed with where they would kill the batteries. I mean, all the batteries were dead. Several times they've done that to me. And they've been in the house, but they would kill the batteries. Uh, the reasons I say that is because there is some film on the thumb drive. There is some pictures on the thumb drive that showed some kind of weird activity going on before the camera went completely dead, and they destroyed the batteries. Yeah, a lot of people say they can't take pictures of UFOs or ETs because of that energy that they have that can actually stop you. It's kind of like a force field that can stop the camera from working. Actually, it can work on you too. You can be frozen by their energy. And I've had that happen to me several times. So I know that energy exists and it's there. Nancy, but this boy, they tried to get pictures with a box camera and they couldn't do it. Is it maybe because of maybe their youth that they didn't really know how to do many things, or maybe was there a supervisor, an adult supervisor, Nancy?
I actually think that just looking at my story, Jerry's mother went out with them, and she just thought that they were making things up, that they were exaggerating. But I guess she understood that when she got there, things just didn't seem, um, things just seemed strange. She saw these prints, and she saw as well that the trees had been burnt up just from the top, which was really weird. And then just the whole feeling of the place. The dog was barking. Apparently, the dog wouldn't go near the landing site. I guess there was like a big circle with the grass was pressed down,
Right.
and the grass was burnt, and so she was there. So she said herself she was a witness that they tried to take these photos and they came out blurry, and it didn't. The photos just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Um,
I got
as
photos like that.
well.
Actually, when the big triangle went over our whole street, my mom lived down the street. It was only about 30 feet, 35 feet off the ground. It actually clipped a tree across my street. And when it come over, and my mom, I asked her, I said, "Did you see that?" She goes, "Yes." She said, "I was afraid to come outside on the porch." And because she said she was afraid of being abducted. And for a woman who was at that time, she was probably about 82 years old. And for a woman to say that, she's had some experiences, and she's told me a lot of experiences that she's had. So it kind of travels in the family. But like you're saying, the top of this tree the next day or two, I noticed it looked like it was burnt and the leaves turned
Yeah.
dead. And my mom said some of her plants were dead, the tops of them. She said just the tops. She said it's weird. But yeah, that story kind of rings a bell when you brought that up, Nancy. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So this whole experience encounter was very sensationalized at that time. There were a couple of newspapers that actually did some stories on this the sighting, and interviewed the kids, and which was, I find, really strange at that time. But again, I think, as we talked earlier, that time period, there was like a UFO sighting boom for
Hmm.
whatever reason, and a lot of UFO encounters. So anyway, the papers got a hold of it. They interviewed the boys. Apparently, there was even a company that came out. Um, there was a lab set up near the site by S.J. Hartman, who ran a chemical ground analysis lab. So they were analyzing the ground, the dirt, and apparently, the boys encountered two men dressed in dark suits. And they were also given some type of document that to sign, and to basically not talk about what they experienced.
Really? Wow.
I don't know if they signed it.
Yeah.
I just find that really bizarre that
Yeah.
somebody, you'd find it bizarre because the newspapers were covering it, and yet these men in these suits were offering them a document telling them to sign it and not say anything about it.
Yeah. In
So,
1957, and during the 70s and also the 60s, up until the late 60s, you're right. A lot of people were talking about that they had a lot of sightings of flying saucers. They called them flying saucers, and they didn't call them UFOs a lot of times. The people on the on the street, but they were talking about on the radio. I wish I had some of these recordings they had on the radio. And at a news, when they did their news, they said if you see a flying saucer, especially you kids, don't go up to it. Don't go up to the flying saucer. And I thought that's strange. That's coming over the radio. And my mom would tell us the same thing. She said, "You see that, kids? Do not approach these flying saucers if they land." And but like I said, little did she know that just maybe a few years later, I ran into one straight up, face to face. But that was the big thing back then. There was a scare back then in the 50s and 60s. Of course, the government tried to pull it down. And you're talking about the men in black, Nancy. And these boys, they wanted them to sign a document. Kids signing a document under 18 years of age wouldn't have worked anyway.
strange. Yeah. That's a strange thing that they wanted them to do. I don't know if they actually signed it or not, but um, I actually did have a chance as well when I was doing the first article for the UFO magazine while I was in school. I did talk to Jerry, who was one of the kids that went with uh, his friend to see this UFO sighting. So I did actually speak to him and interview him, and he sounded very sincere, sounded that, he was actually very freaked out about the whole thing. He remembered it clearly. That was years ago.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was a very strange,
Did they say
strange
what
occurrence.
the men in black looked like, Nancy?
Or in suits, just in
Yeah.
suits, and
How
they
about their face?
were there. They didn't say. I wonder if they were perhaps too scared to reveal too much.
Hmm.
But they didn't say. That they kind of were there and then they disappeared.
Yeah.
They sort of just left and
Yeah, you're right though.
yeah.
Back then there were quite a few flying saucer sightings, what we call them. Uh, you also have talked to other people, and this is where you wrote or you're writing or finished your writing for a sci-fi book that's going to be released this month. You said you had other stories in there. What were some of the good stories that popped out to you that you know worked with, Nancy?
Well, actually, most of the stories that are in my book are actually fiction short stories. Really, this one, the UFO Summer, is the only one that's basically loosely based on this sighting that I was telling you about. In the magazine that I had written my article for, I investigated another um, sighting, and it was actually at a school. It was some students and teachers claimed that there was a school in my city. I won't name the city, that UFO landed in the school playground.
Mm-hmm.
I got a chance to interview the principal. He gave me actually a diagram. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a diagram of the actual UFO.
Okay, yeah.
Apparently, a teacher drew it, and I believe this sighting occurred in the 70s. And it reminds me of there was another sighting. You probably know about that famous sighting in Africa where
Right.
this, I think it
Cool.
was in
Yeah.
Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Was very similar to what happened there. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that it wasn't reported and nobody really talked to the students or teachers.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back
I
let's go back to your sighting. You said you were telling this before the show started. Your sighting
oh,
of something that wasn't just right in the skies wherever lived, or wherever you were at in Canada. Nancy, tell us about that contact.
I had my own sighting. Yeah. That was in January of 2022. I was walking my dog and it was very cold. It was nighttime. We were out on the street just walking on the sidewalk and approaching my neighbor's house. And some of the neighbors that lived in that house were on their driveway and they were looking up at the sky. And they said to me, "Do you see that?" And then I didn't know what they were talking about. I went closer with my dog and then I saw this. It looked like a star that was kind of hanging around a
Mm,
big tree in their backyard. And they told me that the star was actually hiding behind the trees, and that when I got there, it rose up from the trees and was just kind of like hanging there above the treetops. And so we were looking at it, and they were telling me that it had actually been zigzagging before I got there, but I didn't see it move. And then apparently we were looking at it, and it kind of glimmered and then it just kind of went out suddenly. And it was as if it was a light bulb that sort of just burnt out. And the strange thing about it was that you could tell that it was still there, that you could see like a dark silhouette. It was just like it had turned the light off, but it was still hanging there like it was trying to hide, but
mm,
it didn't actually leave. So
yeah.
that
Uh,
was, I
why?
had never seen anything
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. So it just disappeared and it was gone in a flash. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the light just kind of burnt out, but you could kind of sense that it was still there. It was really strange. It was like you could see the silhouette of it, but
Yeah.
and it was dark, but it was still, oh, like it was still hanging around. So,
Okay.
and we were just
This,
kind of
yeah,
standing there
this was
looking
at
at
night.
it.
This is nighttime,
It
right?
was nighttime. It was at
Okay.
nighttime. It was very cold, January, and then we were kind of all excitedly talking about it, and they were filling me in that before I got there, supposedly it was zigzagging behind the tree and moving around. It wasn't a star. I mean, obviously stars don't do that. So, and then it just kind of, you know, was just hanging there in the sky above this tree. And yeah, and then I'm not sure what happened to it, but it must have just obviously left. But it was very strange.
Yeah.
It was like a golden yellow light. Like it did look like a star, but it did not behave like a star. You know,
Uh,
stars don't move.
yeah,
You know.
I've heard of the golden orange color orbs a lot of times. A lot of people have stories of that nature. Uh, Now you talked about this schoolyard that was in Zimbabwe. I
Yeah.
guess you're saying in Africa. Uh, you was talking about a story that's similar to that, where kids saw a group of kids saw UFOs or flying saucers. Uh, when did that happen, Nancy?
Well, that happened. I believe that happened. I'm just trying to look it up here. That happened in the 70s. Um, there was a lady that used to investigate UFO sightings. Actually, that happened, I can tell you, on January 10th, 1979. It was a teacher and three boys, 5, 7, and 11. They witnessed this spaceship with a row of round lights across the bottom, and it supposedly landed in the schoolyard. And the teacher was able to draw a diagram.
Okay, yeah, you
Um,
just showed that a while ago. Yeah, uh,
yeah,
that
apparently the ground shook, and the teachers called the students inside.
hmm, yeah. Was there a real report in the newspaper about that, or did
No, there was no report in the newspaper. I got that information as I was researching for this article for this other UFO. It was the what was it called again? UFO Universe magazine.
hmm,
I had known a lady who was kind of like a UFO go-to person who everybody who had a sighting would contact this lady. Her name was Bonnie Wheeler, and she would record all the UFO sightings all over Ontario, actually all over Canada, I believe. And that was one of the sightings that she told me about. So I included it in my article, but I just found that really interesting.
now, Nancy, you're writing like sci-fi, and you're taking some of these stories that are kind of like real, and you're turning them into a sci-fi type of book or novel. Could you tell us what you're doing with that? You said you have a project or a book that's coming out, and an orb over the strawberry moon. Could you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that project? And of course, I'll put your website in for people who might be interested in that. Could you tell us a little bit about it, an anthology you're calling it, and tell us a little bit about it, Nancy, and what got you involved in doing that project?
Well, it's an anthology of short stories. There are 11 short stories in there, and they just range from stories about aliens, about a killer asteroid, about actually based on one story is based on, I don't know if you ever heard of her. Her name was Nina. I can't remember I can't pronounce her last name, but she was a prodigy. She had the power of telekinesis,
Yeah.
and she could move objects with her mind. I believe this was in the 40s or 50s, but
Mhm.
anyway, the KGB were doing experiments on her and things like that. But anyway, I've got a short story about her, and then I just have various short stories that a short story, the title, "An Orb Over the Strawberry Moon," that is about a homeless lady who sees an orb, but the orb is very gives her, friendly feelings of, love and compassion. And um, so, I mean, not all the stories are not all sort of, scary or have a heavy kind of feel to them. There's, some of them are, positive and I mean, that's it, right? I mean, we're not there are people that believe that all aliens are, perhaps evil and, have dark tech and are trying to abduct everyone. And then other people believe that it's possible that some of the aliens are good, perhaps they're even angels, and when we don't know how to sort of relate to them, so we call them aliens because, we don't know, we can't name them or whatever. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, that goes with, what's written in the Bible, like Book of Revelation, where, there's going to be a great war in heaven. And, is it possible that some of these aliens that we're seeing, perhaps some are actually demons, that are in some kind of physical form that, visiting here, and perhaps some are angels that are, beings of light that, are from heaven, and things that perhaps, someday we'll, discover. But
Yeah.
like all these, sorry, you were gonna
I was going to
interject
say,
there.
I'm glad you brought that up. Not all of them are evil. I think there's some religious overtones of this evil thing. They're not all evil. I mean, if they were evil, they would have hurt me a long time ago, but they didn't. And I know a lot of people who's had abductions and their contactees, and they don't really hurt them. They're not out to hurt us. There could be a fight of good and evil going on, like you said. We have that going on right now on the ground, right here on Earth. We have the fight of the good and evil going on right now. But I think, yes, there's been talk about space wars out there and super soldiers that human beings have actually served in those fights and those battles that they've had out in space. But that's getting in a time jump arena. It was explained to me that this is all happening in futuristic time, like time travel, where these super soldiers will go in and they'll be there fighting for a while and they'll come back. And it could be some years out there in space, but here on Earth, it's probably not as long as time. So it's very confusing if you put in time travel within these space battles and the good and evil. They talk about the reptilians being underground and being evil. uh, that's part of my fourth book that I wrote, sci-fi. It's the bad people underground, and the Palladians are fighting them. The Palladians are good ETs. Uh, have you gotten into? Do you do any? I guess drawings of a lot of your uh, in your short stories. Do you have drawings of these ETs and I guess people who have been involved in things? Explain to you what they look like, Nancy.
Uh, no, I don't have any drawings. I just have the one drawing that I showed you that somebody, actually the principal of the school that I interviewed, that he gave me, that a teacher had drawn. But no, my book does not include any drawings. The cover is actually a nice photo of space that my cousin actually took that photo, and my daughter designed it.
Mhm.
So, but no, I don't have any photos um, at the moment.
Now,
But anyway, I'll see. I'm anxious to see how it's going to be received, and if people enjoy the stories, then perhaps I'll come out with a second anthology. And I've always loved science fiction. I mean, I've always loved watching science fiction movies and books, and the topic of UFOs has always interested me. So that's sort of why I went that direction. And of course, when I was in college, when at Conestoga, like I had mentioned previously, I was writing that article, and that really piqued my interest. I had no idea that there were UFO sightings in my area, that there was actually pretty rich history of UFO
mhm.
sightings in my area. And I'm sure there's, history in lots of different communities. We just are not aware of it. And someone hasn't put all that information together. And but it's interesting. Yeah, it goes back years and years, that people have had
Oh yeah.
encounters with,
It's biblical.
sauce.
You can look in the drawings of, Da Vinci and all this, and the drawings of flying saucers or spaceships in behind some of these really old artwork. It's been I think what a lot of these elites have been doing is they've been lying to us about history. I mean, history goes thousands and thousands of years back, and we don't really know how old mankind really is. We started and stopped six times on this planet. Some scientists are saying, from what they found out, that I so to grasp all this, these ETs and what they're doing. Some people say they're coming back. They are what we they are our future. They're coming back here. The ETs that we see are actually humans in the far fetched future, and they're coming back to make their DNA a better, a stronger, DNA, so they can come back to being what they used to be, and that's like us. Now I don't know about that theory. I've just been hearing them talk about that, but Nancy, on their title, uh, "An Orb Over the Strawberry Moon." How did you come up with that? And what was that about, a space? I mean, is that an ET orb, Nancy?
Uh, yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about orbs. Orbs have been in the news, actually. Well, you probably have heard that yourself of the sightings of those strange drones in New
Right.
Jersey.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of those were accompanied by orbs as well. So I just thought that was, it was in the news, and it was, something that, was an interesting topic to write about.
Yeah.
And again, some people believe orbs could be, they could be heavenly. Some of them could be from somewhere else. It's, interesting to think about.
Hmm.
They could be angels. I mean, they could be, beings of light that are just sort of compacted in a, light form. And I mean, they go back in time as well. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of those crop circle formations that
Yes. Hmm.
some people claim that orbs actually create those crop circles. They hover over them. And I think there might even be a famous video out there of an orb sort of hovering over a
There
crop
is,
circle and
and they said that
creating
was
one. Yeah.
real, but that's still, I think it's still out for final approval or judgment on that, if it's real or not. Because nowadays you can just about do anything with AI. I guess when you talk about these drones and everything that we had in New York, New Jersey, they still have them. They come up there. They're not as many as they used to be. Uh, have they had them in Canada, Nancy? Have you had those drones in Canada?
Yeah, I believe I I'm aware of some video from Toronto in Ontario of some drones, which I've never seen one, but I mean, I guess it's possible. I mean, there's a lot of talk that perhaps these drones are actually not extraterrestrial, that they're um, some kind of, secret tech, you know, um, which is possible that they're actually just doing a lot of surveillance work, or um, I don't know. That's the theories that I've heard,
Yeah, and I've
or
heard there's,
perhaps it's.
yeah, heard there's a couple of colleges involved that they've been working on experimental models of zero type energy, anti-gravity energy that can keep these things aloft, because our drones can only stay up in the air for about a half an hour, you know, depending on their battery strength, and if they use fuel. Uh, but these drones can stay up all night long. 8, 9 hours is what they traveled all night long. So there's
Yeah.
too many oddball things going on with that situation to make me think or believe that all of them were our drones, commercial drones. I don't think so. I think some of them were spacecraft, ET craft, and the orbs and the plasmoids, of course, are probably not explainable. But our governments, all of them, every one of them, they just don't want to tell us. I mean, I thought we was going to get disclosure when Trump come on board, but we're getting the same thing that the last administration said, that they were friendly, they're not enemy, and that they were commercial and FAA approved. And I thought to myself, well, what the heck is going on? And then they come out last week saying that there's the danger of these drones. There's a Senate panel or something that come out and talked about it. There's a danger with these drones, and they need to know how to defend themselves against them. Now, what are they saying?
Oh.
I mean, they're going back and forth and lying to us, actually, Nancy.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody says that there's going to be disclosure and they give a timeline, and all the timeline always gets moved up all the
Right.
time. And I mean, it's hard to say. Is it the government? Is it, some other power that's sort of keeping that veil over our eyes so that we can't, it's not fully revealed to us exactly what it is.
Hmm.
Is it something that would be difficult to accept, if we did sort of, finally, if it was revealed, um, but personally, I think it goes all the way back, even to biblical times. If you read the book of Genesis, it talks about the serpent in the garden, and I believe that serpent was actually a reptilian was in the
Bingo.
garden,
Right.
when
Yep.
Eve were created, because it says that um, God is saying that there will be enmity between you and the woman, and I believe that that means that there is conflict between that reptilian seed and Eve's seed. And there's some kind of mystery in there, And I mean, some people believe that, the reptilian was, in the garden and eventually sort of created the Nephilim. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Nephilim in the Bible that are, the hybrid
Mm.
race that reptilians always wanted to corrupt humanity's DNA so that Christ couldn't come, that our DNA would be so impure that he wouldn't be able to come, um, and just I find it fascinating, just looking from the Bible, where there is a lot of evidence in the Bible of aliens, and which personally, in my opinion, like the Greys and all those types of aliens, I believe that it is like some kind of demonic thing that is in a physical form. And I think that, though, that there are also angels that are um, perhaps, like bright lights, or I know that people have seen angelic beings, with long hair and flowing robes, and sort of labeled those as aliens. Perhaps those are aliens, but or sorry, angels in a physical form. Like they all need some type of physical form to visit
Right.
this world that we're in.
Also
So I
has to
mean,
be visual to us. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They need to take some type of form to visit this, I guess, physicality, whatever you'd want to call it.
Yeah. Has
And
anybody in your
I
family
think,
has anybody in your family or your friends had any encounters with the UFOs or ETs, Nancy?
um, not that I'm aware of. I, I mean, I've heard of some friends that I've known in the past that have had encounters of being abducted. Um, and I mean, I guess to me, it just seems like all the people that have said those kinds of things of being abducted, to me, it seems like a frightening experience, and it's a negative experience. So, I mean, that's why, I'm thinking that biblically, if you look at it, the reptilians or grays, whatever you want to call them, um, it's like there is some kind of enmity between them and humanity. It's like they want to take something from us that is not theirs to take. They want to examine something that we have that they don't have.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
I've heard
emotions,
as well that
our souls, and our emotions. Yeah, that's two of the things that's
and
priceless.
something about our DNA, something about our DNA that attracts them to us for some reason. And it's almost as if there's some type of like a base emotion of jealousy there, like that they know that we are different, and they are trying so hard to recreate what we have, and they can't. Like all these years, thousands and thousands of years, and they can't fully do it, whatever they're trying to do. um and I would say as well, I firmly believe that they don't tell the truth, you know. I think a lot of these people that contactees, you know, that are told certain things, I would just caution them that not everything that they hear is necessarily the truth, you know. I mean, I think that's one of the things, just because these aliens are out there and perhaps have some superior technology, and it doesn't mean that they are superior morally or superior, um, you know, emotionally, or that they have some kind of closer a relationship, say, to God or anything like that, you know. So I just think, you know, approaching it with caution is a good thing. You had mentioned that was it your mother or just some that generation would tell kids not to go near a spaceship. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, you know, perhaps observing from afar and
Yeah. But sometimes
um,
that doesn't happen because when they come to
mm,
abduct people, they come right in your house and they can walk through walls. You know, they have this frequency, a higher frequency they can switch to that can just go right through matter and through walls and go into people's houses and abduct them. Or they take, you know, DNA from them, sperm or eggs, and they have a hybrid. I guess you've heard of the hybrid program that a lot of people think the extraterrestrials are involved in. And what they do is they
mm,
make a child that's human and a half child that's extraterrestrial in nature. So I know I kind of have the feeling that's happened to me in the past because of several things that's happened to me. And I've noticed, I've seen a few kids, or there's probably three of them right now that I've seen that I think that were part are from me, but you only see them one time. Most people say when they have a hybrid child, they've been abducted and they've had, you know, sperm or eggs taken from them, that you only see that child one time and that's it. And but like I said, my mom's had a long history of stuff, and I've been wanting to get her on video talking about what happened to her. She's 97 now and remembers it quite well.
oh,
Yeah. So she still
mm,
remembers all that stuff quite well. And my other brothers and my sisters asked me, why does she talk to you about this stuff? And I said, well, she knows I'm an experiencer also, that I've experienced things, and she's experienced things right in her house. So she said there was one or two that were kind of mean to her, you know, like molested her in bed, and I shouldn't talk that way, but that's the way she kind of put it, you know, that they were shadow people, and shadow people are basically an ET that is probably in the invisible mode, but they do cast the shadow when there's light that's shining on them, and they
mm,
cast the shadow. So that type of thing, I think, is scary, and you really don't know. It's scary anyway if something comes in your house and abducts you and makes you do things you don't want to do. That's against our rules, actually, and but they do that. They break our laws quite a bit, and they don't. And what they're after, like you said, Nancy, they're after our DNA, and I think you're correct about that. They want to restart
mhm,
something somewhere else, or restart their you know, their race or their particular race. They want to try to put more love and more and more, I guess, emotions into what their lives are. But because most ETs don't seem like they have emotions, so that's what they look for. uh Nancy, it sounds like you studied this quite a bit about the Bible and anything else that strikes you about the
yeah.
Bible.
Well, I mean, I will say that I think the Bible has a lot of clues and talks about, you know, these aliens. I mean, we know them as we view them as aliens now. Back then, you know, they talked of them like as if they were sons of God. That's how they referred to them.
Mhm.
I believe the Book of Enoch has some
Yes,
information about they call them the Watchers,
right.
and that the Watchers landed at I believe it was Mount Hermon. Um, so I mean, it goes way back. And I would just say about you were talking about aliens coming in and sort of invading your home and things like that. And I've heard that if you truly don't want them in your home, and if you want to take a stand, to pray. And prayer actually does work. It will cause them to run away. And if you actually say in Christ's name for them to leave, they will leave. And I know there were people actually, they had a ministry around Area 54, I believe, in that area. And they were working with a lot of people that had some pretty evil sounding experiences with UFOs. They were being abducted. They didn't want the experiences, they were afraid. They felt like they were being kidnapped and, tampered with. And these guys, they would pray for these people and they would actually tell them, that you can tell these beings to leave. You've got the power through Christ's name to tell them to go away. And these people would do it, and they had success. These things left them alone. So I think, you have the ability to tell them to leave you alone. If you're feeling like they're bothering you and they're negative and they're draining your energy and whatnot, you can tell them to leave, in Christ's name. And I believe that they will leave. I think it's like a spiritual battle.
Right.
I think it's a spiritual battle, sort of in this physicality.
I,
Um,
it's happened to me a couple of times, Nancy, that I was being
mhm.
abducted, or I thought I was. I was being brought back actually, where I got so afraid, I just jumped up and I
Yeah,
said, "God help me," and it was all over with.
yeah,
They're gone. And so
that's
I've done it twice. I said, "God help me." I got so scared that during the abduction, in which I guess I feel like some of these guys that go out hunting for Bigfoot, they go out there in
yeah,
the forest and they're all big he-mans to start with. And as soon as they hear one or see one and it's growling at them, they run like little kids, back to their vehicles and they leave.
yeah.
I don't want to do that. I always wanted to go when I want to research or investigate these things. I don't want to be afraid of it. And that's what my approach has been throughout my life. But there's been a couple of times where I just
Hmm.
got really afraid, and especially when one of them sat down beside me on the bed, I didn't know what was going to happen next, and so I just
Yeah.
had enough of it. And the whole experience was a really was one of my worst, I guess, abductions things, to where I was laying in my bed and it was 1:30 in the afternoon. I was just stretching out, and I heard my sister's voice after I got shocked. It sounded like you're stepping on a box of, crackers. It was really staticky, shocky, like, and it hit my shoulders and I was paralyzed. I know what sleep paralysis is, and wasn't sleep paralysis. I was able to look out my bedroom door on a sunny day, and I started to move around, and then I got hit again with it, a real shock, electricity, and then I was really paralyzed. I was done. I just and then I heard my sister's voice in the hallway call for me. She said, "Dave, you can do it. Come on, you can do it." The strange thing about that is my sister was dead 4 years before that happened. Yeah, and I heard her
Yeah.
voice. Yeah, so she must have come through the portal that these beings were coming through. And then the thing about the baby, I talk about the hybrid baby. A lot of people don't understand this, that you do see your child one time, but I had my hand up against the headboard and something dropped a little baby's hand in my hand. And I pulled down on its fingers and its palm. It felt like a baby about 3 or 4 months old, maybe. And I pulled on it to make sure it was flesh and it was a baby. And I said, "Oh my God, that's a baby. What are they putting that baby's hand in my hand?" I couldn't see because my eyes were going the other way, and I couldn't move my head. So then after that, I felt that sitting down next to me in my bed, and that's when I said, "Oh God, help me." So I know it does help. It's helped me twice.
Yes.
That's happened to me twice. So I know it does help. Uh, they're not allowed to really mess with our souls. I think that's their limitations also. They're here to experiment on our DNA, on our physical bodies, and how to replicate, that part of it. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. They do want our DNA. They want our emotions and everything else. But some of the other stories that you write about, now short stories, I hate to say this, I wrote three, books, full size books, but here I'm knocking myself. a lot of people get into the short stories and they get into the short stories on the internet. A lot of people want to go in and out as quick as they can, like on TikTok or on Instagram
Yeah.
and ebooks. You make them shorter, but you got short stories. And I think that's a good idea to try to talk about things in a short story form where it'll attract more people that'll read it. Could you tell us maybe one or two more stories out of that anthology that you wrote, Nancy?
Sure. I wrote a story. Well, it's about it's called Robo Dogs, and it's just about a farmer who it's kind of set more so in the future, and these robot dogs are like well, the robot dogs that you see in the news today, they're patrolling, and they're kind of used as almost like drones, like sentinels, something like that, sort of like just patrolling around. And he has to go find his stepson. His stepson went to go get some antibiotics for his sister because she's very sick. And this is set in the future where basically kind of civilization is kind of crumbling, and you've got all these robot dogs prowling around, as well as the drones, like the drones you'd see in the New Jersey, what we were talking about before. So it's just kind of like a thrilling short story of how this farmer has to, drive down the country road and go rescue his stepson from these robot dogs. And it's sort of like a commentary on what could happen in the future, if we perhaps relied too much on robotics and AI, and how it could end up that, the robots and AI are constantly conducting surveillance on us and kind of keeping us in a prison. Um, so to me, it's kind of like a social commentary, almost like sometimes I feel like as if, when you write these stories, it's like you're a prophet. You're sort of like, telling people what could happen if we sort of let things, get away from us, like, develop AI into something that's super AI that, could challenge us in the near future and would be very difficult to control and things like that. And I find you can really do that in short story format, in a fictional format. Maybe people will think and say, well, yeah, I mean, what if society ends up like that, where there are these robot dogs that are going to patrol us and, keep us in a prison? And, what if, AI is actually not such a great idea, if it's developed further, and, things like that. I like to try and make people think about those things, through short stories. And, but I mean, it's a scary thought, but
Yeah,
it's entertaining, but
you could elicit thought from people from seeing this, and I have some questions about AI too. I don't know where this is all going. I mean, you can write a book with AI. I wouldn't want to do it, and I know some people that are doing it. They just feed it some ideas and come up with a book. Uh,
oh, yes,
that's,
yeah, yeah.
that's
That's
making
generally frowned upon in the
yeah
writing community. You
yeah
don't like, people. See, the other thing about it is, as well as it's people, you realize that the AI has stolen a lot of people's writing.
yeah.
And that's kind of how they train the AI, is through other authors' works, that, and the authors are not, don't realize that their books or writings have been taken. So I mean, that's the other kind of ethical thing about writing a book with AI, is that, it's been trained, by using other people's writings, without their knowledge. So, I mean, that's the controversy, I guess. So yeah, the writing community is very much, frowning upon anything that's, written by AI, or even like trying to come up with a plot through AI. That's kind of suspect too. I mean, really it's best to just sort of, keep to your own ideas. And
It's
but
making us
that's
way.
the whole goal there.
I've done some drawings through AI. You know,
Yeah.
I think drawings are okay because it can come up with things. But I've seen movies on Netflix. You'll go to a movie and you think, oh, this looks real, but then you keep watching a little bit and you say, oh no, this is AI. These are all not really people, and as good as they're getting with that, it's really strange and odd. But I don't want to watch that. I know what you're talking about, Nancy, but I think what you're doing is trying to enlighten people on what could happen. with this AI and what's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah, just sort of
Yeah,
almost as a warning, maybe just to kind of think about it, where technology is heading, and the blurring of reality and technology is getting a lot more difficult to, determine. Like you were saying with movies, I mean, some of these video memes that you see on social media, you can't even tell if that's AI generated or not. It's getting so, kind of spooky. I mean, we can't tell. Pretty soon we won't be able to tell what's reality, and I mean that's what they're doing to the government. They do that purposely. They create these AI generated videos, and it's because they want you to think a certain way. Like they want to sort of, it's a psyop. They want to sort of point you in a certain direction so that you will think a certain way and accept things perhaps that are going on, without questioning things. And but that's where it's always important to have a critical eye and sort of, not believe perhaps everything that you see on social media, and sort of, determine, well, could that be AI? I mean, it's getting a lot more difficult now, but um, yeah, that's just something that we kind of have to constantly, watch out for. and
right. And a lot
and
of these ETs that are coming here, I know I saw a holograph of one ET, a small reptilian, and I saw it's a holograph, and they say they can come here like, uh, you see these movies like Avatar. They come here
Mhm.
like an avatar, holographically, and they can come here and visually, take, make you think that they're there, but they're really not there, but they're able to watch you and see you. Uh, and this is what a lot of ETs could be. They could be holographically coming here like an avatar. And that movie Avatar was actually a movie that groundbreaking in a way. It let us know that things like that can happen, like body doubles or duplicates. We've had that too. So it's something that we need to think about and worry, not to worry about anything. Nobody needs to worry. That's the problem with people today is everybody worries too much about what they think's going to happen, and it may not be. But I think you're right on with AI. Elon Musk even said something about there's got to be some kind of a limit to it, and we got to know where to stop. But how do you stop AI when it just gets unleashed and it just goes on its own, Nancy? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think too, you have to, be wary of things like introducing some type of chip into your body, which I'm sure is coming soon. I mean, I know Elon Musk has talked about that Neuralink,
Yeah.
um, which I believe, I think that he actually had said before he became really popular with the X platform, that the only way for humanity to survive would be to merge with AI through some type of chip. And then it's interesting that he contradicts himself and says, that AI is becoming too dangerous and all these things. So I mean, personally for me, I mean, I think introducing any kind of chip into your body is probably a bad idea because you don't know who's going to control you. Is it going to be AI, or even if it sounds like the most amazing thing, even if your intelligence is going to go through the roof, or it's going to monitor your health and you'll be more healthy. I mean, those are all just kind of like bribery to me, like as humans do.
Elon talked about using, this chip for actually disabled people who can't see.
Yeah,
They made
yeah.
it's helped them to visualize, and then also people with spinal injuries where they can't walk. They can put a chip in your body, and it'll hook up the nerves, I guess through frequencies or whatever, hook up the nerves in your lower legs, and you can actually walk and move. Now, if it's going to be used for disabilities, I'd say yeah, that's fine, it's great. But a chip to control our thinking and our minds and to have us under some kind of, I guess, house arrest as slaves or whatever. But I think the disability part of it sounds okay. But otherwise, let's
Yeah,
again that
I
can.
mean, if you want to volunteer, and if yeah, if you want to volunteer for that, and if you have a disability. But I mean, as far as, kind of introducing it for everyone to sort of be, hooked up to some type of central AI, that's a scary thought. And,
Mhm.
I believe that's possible. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with the Book of Revelation. It talks about the mark of the beast.
Right.
A
Hmm.
lot of Christians have said that, perhaps that's actually a chip that's placed, either in your brain or in your hand, your right hand. So, I mean, it says there in the Bible that whoever doesn't have the mark won't be able to buy or sell.
Yeah.
So, really, it sounds almost like some type of digital currency or something digital that's implanted in you in the future. That would prohibit you from buying or selling if you don't have that. So um,
I wonder where they
who
got that
knows?
idea, Nancy, about the chip, because ETs have been putting implants in people for a long time. Who knows how long, but that we've known of 50 years. I know I had one or two implants myself, and I dug them both out. And but who knows what they're for? Why they're not there to locate you, because they can locate you through your frequencies. Each one of us has a different frequency. They can locate you and come back to you in the future. So it's not that. It's probably more for DNA or DNA study, or hooking you up with their own little neural link, like Elon was talking about, that somehow or another they can keep an eye on you and find out what you're doing and what your thoughts are and what your feelings are, and they can utilize that to formulate their own, I guess, human being, with probably without a soul. I don't know. To sum up things, we're at the hour now, right now, Nancy. To sum up things about your project and your book, you can tell us how we can get a hold of it. And I know I'm going to put your website in the narrative, but tell us how we can get a hold of your book, and how who would be interested in this book. We've talked about a lot of it, but you can mention who would like to read these short stories. I know people are into short stories now. Go ahead, Nancy. Tell us a little bit about who would be
Sure.
interested.
Well, my book again is called An Orb Over the Strawberry Moon. It's a collection of short stories, sci-fi short stories, 11 stories, and it is going to be available as an ebook on Amazon by next week. Um, it is yeah, going to be available on Amazon. You can also go to my website, and I'll have a link there to it. My website is nancywaddellauthor.com. I'm also on Substack. If anybody is on Substack, that's a popular platform right now for writers. I'm Nancy Waddell Publisher on Substack. Sometimes I'll release some free short stories. A lot of them are sci-fi short stories. So I like to do that. And yeah, I think anybody that is interested in science fiction, that likes, dystopian stories, stories about aliens, stories about, I mean, some of the stories also just touch on, kind of family themes, but through a science fiction lens. The first story that I have in there is about an asteroid that's coming to basically collide with Earth in the distant future, and it's about the main character's name is Noah, and he's frantically trying to build a rocket ship to get his family off of Earth and
Oh,
actually
okay.
to Mars,
Mhm.
to a settlement on Mars,
Mhm.
to escape this asteroid, and he's being ridiculed for it. So it's got some, family themes and emotion, and yeah, and I've also got some time travel story in there as well if people are interested in time travel. So yeah, I just encourage anyone to check it out.
Yeah,
And
it sounds
and
interesting. It sounds
well,
like just the reverse of like the Bible stories. You're doing it in a
yeah,
different way. You're
yeah,
modernizing. Yeah. And little do we know that Noah probably did have a ship instead of a boat. We don't know. That's another
yeah,
thing of controversy. So we don't, and time travel, I think they've already got that. And I think they've been using that for some time, the underground military establishment. So yeah, there's things that they're not telling us that they already have. Even Trump said that we have weapons and we have things that you wouldn't believe, and apparently he's
yeah.
he's been shown what we have. but we haven't used them on the battlefield. That's for sure. We still usually put boots on the ground, and that's a sad thing. Nancy from
Mm.
Canada, Nancy Waddell, thank you so much for being on the show. It's interesting talking about the futuristic things and some of these things back in the 50s and 60s kind of brings back thoughts of my own back in the 50s and 60s with flying saucers. Nancy Waddell, thank you very much. And this is Dave Emmons with The Strange Reality, and we hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Good night.